So, for example, getting into how we access that cash. So it's going to grow conservative over a rate of time, right? A lot of it's going to go towards insurance in the beginning, but we get that cash value working. 5, 8, 10 years on down the line, we say, okay, I need $500,000 for a property. Where do I get that? Well, I have $1 million of cash value built up in this insurance policy. How can I access it? Well, what we recommend is loaning against the policy. When you look at insurance companies, typically with mutually owned insurance companies, you're going to see that they have direct recognition and indirect recognition. And what that is when you go borrow the funds out of the cash, if you directly recognize it, think of it as an investment account. You have $1 million in an investment account. You pull out $500,000 to go put into real estate to get alternative assets grown for you, right? It's going to be directly recognized. We're only left with $500,000 in this bucket now, growing at 2 to 5%, right? Direct recognition. Indirect recognition or non-direct recognition, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing. Think of it as pulling equity out of a real estate property, right? You're not losing any value. You're just pulling the equity out, putting it in a different asset. Now we have 2 assets working for us. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay, so you're still getting the compounding effect.
Absolutely.
From the original principal, 100%, because it hasn't been reduced by what you borrowed.
Yep. So we take out $500,000 from the $1 million to put in real estate. We still have the $1 million growing at 2 to 5%.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Do you guys see how that supplements what we're doing with real estate?
Question: why would anyone do direct recognition then?
Because there's insurance companies out there that don't offer it,
Got it.
that are mutually held, and people don't know the difference. So, like I said, I don't care if you guys go through us. If this is an attractive strategy for you, I just want you guys to know how it works, what to be on the lookout for if you are going to pursue this strategy with somebody, right? Because the last thing you want is to pull out something that's directly recognized and it's not working for us, right? We can go do that in the stock market. Yes, there's more risk, but it's not really the purpose of it, right? We want to make sure that we have the value still growing at that 2 to 5%. Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
So when you say infinite banking, how many people look at you cross-eyed? What in the world is that?
Well, you got a lot of guys on TikTok that paint this pretty picture. That's it's the
Okay.
bee's knees and all that.
Okay.
And
Right.
like I get my friends like will message me and say, "Is this real?" I was like, "Yeah, but they're leaving out like big pieces of how it actually works." They paint it to be this big sexy picture. It's like you're only gonna get like 2 to 5% on returns on it. Like it's good and it serves its purpose. But the whole idea is, wouldn't you rather have your cash working for you at 2 to 5% versus sitting in a checking account earning nothing, waiting for that next deal, right? So it's truly complementing what we're doing on a tax deferred basis. So yeah.
Because I know, when a couple years ago or someone I heard about infinite banking, I was like, what in the heck is this? Right? So
So Cole, you say it has to be on a whole life policy? Can it be on a universal life?
Yep. I mean, I'm licensed to sell universal life, so I'm licensed to do everything really. We wouldn't use it for this strategy. Reason being is that universal lives are structured that the cost of insurance goes up every single year, right? So eventually the cost of insurance is going to start eating at your cash value because you're going to get to a point to say, I don't want to pay that premium every single year, right? So what you'll do is, well, I want to keep this afloat because if I don't, and then taxes start to become a picture if it starts to lapse. So I'm just going to let the cash value pay for it and I don't have to worry about it, right? Well, then we're not having our assets work for us. Now we're just buying insurance. So if we are participating in the whole life policy, that's a fixed premium for a set amount of time. You can structure it to where we pay into it 10 years and then you're done, but that cash value and death benefit is still growing at that rate of return, that dividend that the insurance company is paying us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They do pay high commissions. I know that a lot of people sell ULs for that reason. I also know that people sell ULs because they are not, some of them sell IULs. Are you familiar with that at all?
No.
So it's called an indexed universal life. And so what they sell is, it's tied to the stock market, so you're going to get great returns, right? Well, what is a little bit of smoking mirrors in a sense of, one, they're not licensed to be able to sell securities, so it's their way to get assets into the market. But it's not growing off that index. They're actually paying an interest rate. That is how they're allowed to get around it and sell it. So it's insurance guys who aren't licensed to sell securities that are trying to sell it as a super Roth IRA because it's growing as tax deferred over time. But eventually it's going to eat into itself in some sort of fashion, or at least that's the way that we've seen it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So when you build up this capital,
Yeah.
right, then you want to access it. So, you know, and you're talking about, somebody's sitting there waiting for their next big deal,
Mm-hmm.
right? How long does it take? What does that look like to say, okay, hey, I want to access this, you know, X amount of capital out of here? Does
Yep.
it take a few weeks, months, days?
So-
Just call Cole, I'll bring it over.
Yeah,
in a wheelbarrow.
Yeah, I'll bring it over in the bed of my truck.
Yeah.
Put it on a pallet. It'll look real nice. But no, so because you own the policy, you get to do what you want. The insurance company doesn't actually own the policy. You own the policy, so you have sole control over it, right? So when you want to borrow it, it does take a little bit of time to get the money. I'd say a week or so. Maybe a little bit extra time if mail's running behind, but it's fairly quick. It's not like you have to go to the bank. Somebody has to underwrite the loan. We can access that capital pretty quick. It is an adjustable loan rate. So a lot of people say, well, is it prime plus 1 that we're going to have to pay on it? It's actually a Moody's corporate bond yield average index. Weird, I know, but that's just what insurance companies use to be able to index what the rate would be at the given time, right? So there was a policy I was looking at today. Right now it'd be roughly 4.65%, right, to access that capital. And so as you borrow those funds, they come to you like a loan, right? Only difference is we're paying ourselves back. We're paying ourselves principal and interest back instead of paying principal and interest to the bank. So yes, it's going to build back up our cash value as it's already working for us, as we talked about a second ago. But now we are also earning interest on it. So not only are we getting interest and dividends from what the insurance company is investing in the general account, we're also paying ourselves a little bit more capital, growing our wealth back there as well. Yes, we want to use it to supplement real estate because, like I said, we're getting a 20% internal rate of return with Jake. Why would we not? So we just have to wait for him to find the deal. But that's really what it looks like. It's quick access to capital, and it builds flexibility into how can we fund future deals when they come up. Last thing we want is an opportunity that comes up, might be in competition for the deal. We can go access it quickly and make it happen, right? You used to be able to borrow up to 100% of the cash value. With some companies, you still might be able to. With the strong companies that we write through, it is 90% of the cash value that you are able to borrow up to. So I want to throw a disclaimer out there. If I have $1 million in there, typically able to borrow roughly around $900,000 of that to be able to get to work for us in the real estate market. So,
All right.
yeah.
Question, Mike.
Is there
I was
initial
gonna-
liquidity that you'd advise your clients to be like, to have this much and then looking at these whole life policies?
It's all dependent on the situation and how much they have liquid and their cash flows through real estate, if that's your main source of income, right? There's some guys that they have real estate and they also have W-2 income. That changes the picture a little bit because we know what we have coming in. Rents can fluctuate a little bit, obviously in the right way, going up 13% year over year here. But it would just be, I would never say there's too small of a number to start with. I would say it'd be just to get started, right? A lot of these guys, the book that I brought that Derek recommended me bring, what he will say, and a lot of other guys that do this for real estate investors, and quite frankly, we do it for business owners too. It's an asset on the books for the business owner. So if you own a separate LLC, the LLC can actually own it, right? Something to think about there. That's a little bit of a sidetrack. But you're gonna do it with multiple policies over multiple years, right? So a lot of times guys will have a term policy that, okay, I'll start with this smaller one now. Cash flows increase. I really like this. Hey, I want to be my own bank idea. So what they'll do is, as cash flows increase, they'll convert that term over to whole life, right? That way you don't have to worry about insurability. That makes sense? Awesome.
Speaking of insurability,
Yep.
what about, since it is life insurance, is there a, you know, do you have to be certain, do you have to be nice and healthy like Jake, or can an old man like me do that? So, oh, did you? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Is there a health component to it? Maybe
Yes, there is.
That's what I could
So
maybe
once you
say,
apply,
yeah.
you have to go through underwriting. They take blood, urine, do a little background check,
No, I'm not-
making sure that you're not dying tomorrow, because they don't want you to pay one premium and then, oh, here's $1 million, you know?
Yeah.
So you do have to qualify for it. If you don't qualify for it, there are a lot of people that they will still own it, so they have pure control over it, but they'll insure somebody like their wife or their kids. Now, if that's something you want to do, go for it. Not everybody likes that idea, so it's really dependent amongst yourself, right? The underwriting process is pretty thorough. They want to make sure that you're as healthy and as good looking as you say that you are.
Like Derek.
Yeah.
It can't be 55 with three heart attacks.
Yeah.
So-
No, probably not.
Yeah.
They-
So I didn't mean to steal your question. You.
No, that was it.
Oh, okay.
I was
Okay.
going to say, if I was 55 years old or
Yeah.
30 years old, would it be the same policy? But you kind of answered the question.
Yeah. So
appreciate that.
the younger you get them, the more value you can get with the death benefit and the cash value within. The older you get, the more premium you're going to have to pay to get that same value, if that makes sense. The healthier you are, same thing. You can still get, we call it table rated, which means, hey, you're not as healthy as we thought, but you still qualify. It's still going to be a little bit more expensive for that same value, if that makes sense. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
Can you convert a term life insurance into that type of full term or full life insurance?
Yeah.
Can you do that and still rip the benefit of borrowing against it or not?
You would have to convert it to a new whole life policy. Now, the term itself, you have to make sure that you're still within that convertibility period. So a lot of companies, what you'll do is you'll buy, say, a 20-year term. They'll give you 10 years to convert it. Some people, they say, well, I don't know when this is going to be. I'll just add a rider onto that called extended convertibility period. And so instead of 10, it'll give me 15 years to be able to convert it. So say you bought $1 million 20-year term policy, cash flows increase. I got this small one working for me. Cash flows increase. I want to convert $750,000 of that death benefit over to whole life. What does that look like, right? The other thing within that is structure of it. So a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to go buy a whole life policy from my guy I'm working with, right? There is structure that you need to be working with somebody who's done it before, a firm that has experience doing this type of strategy, because it differentiates on what you want to see from that policy, right? So some guys say, hey, I don't need this capital for 5, 8, 10 years. I want to get, just put me in a base policy that's got the highest internal rate of return on it, right? It'll give me 4%, 5%, year 8, 9, 10. That's cool with me. We're rocking. There are other guys that say, hey, I want a policy that I have a lot of access to cash early on, right? I want to show what I've put into it. So what we have to do is get a little creative on the structure of it. It's called overfunding. So the idea is we have to get creative with into the sense of how do we pay as much as we can for the least amount of insurance. Sounds dumb, right? But back in the 80s, these things were paying dividends of 11, 12, 13%. Right. And you had everybody and their brother just pouring money into these things to grow wealth and go buy real estate, grow their business, what have it, right? So what the IRS said was, all right, that's a lot of money that we're missing out on. We want to get paid too, right? Because as I said, it grows tax deferred. And so they put a rule into place, Rule 7702, basically saying that you are only allowed to overfund to a certain extent, right? So you can't just throw every dollar of cash in here towards the cash value. You do have to buy death benefit and insurance, right? So our goal is to get to that line as close as we can without the policy becoming a modified endowed contract, right? Meaning that as we borrow against it, yes, it's still a life insurance policy, but because we're over that limit, now it's taxable. It's not growing tax deferred anymore. So.